In 1731, tensions between Britain and Spain were running high, but no one could have predicted that a severed ear would spark a war. Yes, you heard that right, an ear. This is the bizarre and bloody story of the War of Jenkins Ear. It all began in the early 18th century. The British and the Spanish were fierce competitors in the Caribbean and South America, vying for control of lucrative trade routes and territories. Tensions simmered for years, but one particular incident tipped the scales toward war. In 1731, British merchant captain Robert Jenkins was sailing through Spanish-controlled waters off the coast of Florida when his ship was boarded by Spanish coast guards. Accused of smuggling, Jenkins's ship was ransacked, and for good measure and no reason, they cut off his ear. But what happened next? Well, Jenkins didn't forget about his ear. In fact, he kept it, yes, kept it, in a jar and presented it to the British Parliament in 1738. That severed ear became the symbol of Spanish aggression, and the British public demanded action. The story of Jenkins' ear fueled anti-Spanish sentiment, and 8 years later, the British were looking for an excuse to force Spain out of the Caribbean and South America, once and for all. They launched what would be called the War of Jenkins Ear, a conflict that would see 25,000 dead or wounded and nearly 5,000 ships lost at sea, all for the sake of an ear. The war officially began in 1739, with British forces attacking Spanish ports and ships in the Caribbean and Florida. One of the most famous battles was the Siege of Cartagena in 1741. The British, led by Admiral Edward Vernon, launched an ambitious attack on the heavily fortified Spanish city of Cartagena. But the operation was a disaster. Disease, poor planning, and the fierce resistance of Spanish forces resulted in one of the British military's most humiliating defeats. The British lost thousands of men and had to retreat, tail between their legs. The war dragged on for years, with no decisive victory. In 1748, the War of Jenkins Ear was effectively merged into the larger conflict of the War of Austrian Succession, and both sides eventually agreed to peace. In the end, the war was largely pointless. Thousands of lives and nearly 5,000 ships were lost, all sparked by one man's ear. Spain and Britain remained rivals, but the war solved none of their disputes over trade or territory. The War of Jenkins Ear might sound absurd, but it's a reminder that history is often shaped by small, strange moments. In this case, the loss of one man's ear became the pretext for a war that cost thousands of lives. It's a story of pride, politics, and power, and of course, an ear in a jar. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this strange slice of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. What other bizarre stories would you like us to cover? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.